Hi guys, Mr. Fabio here. We're going to take a break from the Civil War to explain the concept of propaganda. Why? Because your next assignment is going to ask you to read an article about propaganda and then create a piece of propaganda from the Civil War time period. You could also create create propaganda from a different time period if you would like, for some extra credit on top of the Civil War propaganda if you're really interested. And that is going to be done through any media of your choice, including an online, picture that you create with like Photoshop or Paint, as well as a drawing that you make at home, a video. You could even do a quick TikTok if you want. I don't care, but that will be the assignment. Try to make it fun. Anyway, so what you should know about propaganda. So what is propaganda? Propaganda is basically information that's created in the media by the governments to create change of political opinion. Often it is biased, so one-sided or incomplete. That's how you can kind of point out propaganda, if it only tells one side of the story or it leaves out a big chunk of the narrative. A lot of the times propaganda leans to one political perspective. And also its big thing is it's created by governments to convince the people to believe something. So me making a poster to support, freeing the Tiger King out of prison is not propaganda. Instead, that's just me being bored and in isolation. So that is not propaganda. So history of propaganda. So it's been around since recorded history, approximately for 5,000 years. So this isn't a new idea that came out of recent history. Politicians have been doing it forever. Governments have been doing it forever. To convince its people to follow their direction. This includes all different political leanings, so it doesn't just concern communists. It also does, capitalists have done it, democracies have done it, totalitarian regimes have done it, Obama's done it, Trump has done it, Hillary Clinton has done it, Bush has done it, everybody has done it. Most popularly, though, in history class, we talk about propaganda in the context of totalitarian regimes and totalitarian governments like the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, and current-day North Korea. Why? Because they're a little loopy. I mean, their whole entire totalitarian government's whole entire plan is essentially to convince the population to do some crazy stuff. So they spend a lot of money on propaganda campaigns. For example, in the top corner, you could see a pretty blonde Aryan girl waving a Nazi swastika, looking really excited about life. Meanwhile, there's concentration camps up, there are millions of people dying, and there's no mention of that in this beautiful picture of this beautiful girl. In the bottom corner, we have a propaganda poster from the Soviet Union that has a military gentleman in the center and has two workers holding the sickle and hammer, which is the ultimate symbol of communism, in bright red, looking so powerful and so proud to be communist, but also leaves out the part where the government forced all of Ukraine to give up its grain and caused mass starvation of about 20 million people. That is not mentioned in the propaganda poster. And finally, two of my recent favorites. This is propaganda from current-day North Korea. We have literally hands and a bomb crushing a U.S. soldier. And this is a telephone case, which I find really funny. It is, again, a hand crushing a U.S. soldier. Now, we know the other side of the perspective is really we just don't want to be bombed. And they're a little still angry about the whole Korean War thing. I get it, but, it's definitely anti-American propaganda created by the North Korean government. But While totalitarian regimes take over a lot of the narratives in history classes about propaganda, this has never excused the United States. The United States has always engaged in propaganda campaigns, especially during wars or during unpopular decision making. So when a leader decides to do something that is unpopular or maybe even immoral, propaganda is created to convince the people that it's okay, leaving out a good part of information and boosting up nationalism and patriotism. So yay, America, woo, which is great, except if the leader is doing something that they're trying to cover up, which has happened throughout history since, as you'll see, even Abe Lincoln, great Abe, he ends up doing a little bit of that. So we'll see that later on. But this propaganda in times of peace also advertise patriotism, nationalism, and other things believed to benefit the public. So propaganda is not necessarily always a bad thing. Sometimes, like in, patriot nationalistic commercials or patriotic commercials, that's all propaganda. It doesn't tell the full story of the lives of citizens in the military or lives of citizens every day. It paints it in a very rosy, beautiful way, but it's propaganda. It doesn't tell the whole story. It definitely is there to serve its purpose of trying to build patriotism and build loyalty to the United States, which is not a bad thing. We want loyal American citizens to some degree. Critical thinking, but loyal. So some examples that I have at the bottom is the I Want You for the U.S. Army poster, which is Uncle Sam. He is a famous icon. This poster is famous. But the fact that Uncle Sam is out searching for you in particular to join the military is a little not very accurate. Then the next one is the leader of Japan, painted in a very offensive caricature of a Japanese person, which is very common during this World War II time period. Our next boss, and if you can't see it, that's the Capitol building at the bottom, with the Japanese flag saying, Japan's going to take over America. And the next one is an octopus of Stalin during this, representing Stalin in the Soviet Union as an octopus taking over the world, which was a big fear, not necessarily the most accurate according to historians, but a huge fear. And we have Obama's poster during his political campaign with underneath his face is hope. It does leave out a lot, but it's again political propaganda that tries to convince people to vote for him, convince people to feel this hope. It's a new day, it's a new world, it's a new change for people. And then finally, the very popular Make America Great Again hat, is definitely a piece of propaganda. It is advertised by our current president, and it's basically saying Make America Great Again, as if America is no longer great, leaving out and omitting some information as well as all of the others. What is not propaganda? So propaganda is not always a bad thing, like I said earlier. Sometimes it might be for our citizens. It might be the best thing for our citizens. It might be best for us in times of war to be uber patriotic and inspired. We need people to join the military, so we need people to feel this sense of patriotism and love for a country. So that's not a bad thing. Also, it is not created by a random person in their basement or home. Again, I can't go downstairs in my basement and make a poster and call it propaganda. It's not mass produced. It's not created by the government. Even if it gets a bunch of shares on Twitter, it's still not propaganda. It's still not created by government or government agencies. And finally, propaganda is not factual. Statistics that are created by cited major medical and major scientific organizations that's not propaganda. That's not fake. That's not bias. That's not omitted. You have to analyze it in order to completely comprehend it, but that's not propaganda. The statistics can be used within propaganda campaigns, but the study itself is not propaganda. Propaganda is when there is omitted information, which is when propaganda is not so great. So do you think you could spot the propaganda? On a separate document, please number your paper from 1 to 4. Tell me if it's propaganda or not and why in a full sentence. So open up a Google Doc and try this out. So this is the daily statistics reported by the CDC on the coronavirus. Is it propaganda or not? You could pause me now and take a look. This gentleman, for number 2, has a poster saying, "All I need to know about Islam I learned on 9/11. Is this propaganda or not? Why or why not?" This YouTube video, which I'll post in on the assignment, is created by the Army. So is that propaganda? And finally, this graffiti that says justice or justicia, lies, and the upside down American flag on the current border of Mexico and the United States. Is this propaganda? Send your answers. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys, and I hope this helps with the assignment to come. Bye-bye.